Good afternoon. It is 4 o'clock and this is Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024. And this is a regular meeting of the Jefferson Public Utility District Board of Commissioners. My name is Jeff Randall. I'm president of the board and I'm calling our meeting to order. Jefferson PUD will be offering both virtual online meetings as well as in-person meetings unless advance notice is provided. Online participant audio will be muted upon entry. Please unmute at the appropriate time to speak. And if you're calling in, use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise a hand to request to speak. So let's do a quick roll call. I'm Jeff Randall, president of the board and commissioner for District 1.
Kenneth Collins, Commissioner District 2.
And Commissioner Tupper is out of the country and is excused for this meeting, but we do have a quorum of the board. All right, the next item is agenda review. Do we have any additional items or are we good on the agenda? So I will entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
Move that the agenda be accepted.
I will second the motion. All in favor of accepting the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have an approved agenda. All right, public comment. So this public comment period allows members of the public limited to 3 minutes each on any items not specifically listed on the agenda or for items listed on the consent agenda. Prior to any public comment, members of the public must first be recognized by the president and are not permitted to disturb, disrupt, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct and fair progress of the commission's meetings. After an initial warning by the president, individuals who intentionally violate these guidelines through actual disruption of the commission meeting will be dropped from the meeting. Okay, so do we have individuals who would like to speak on items not on the agenda or on consent agenda? Please go ahead.
Hi, my name's Carrie Welch. And I sent a letter a little while ago about the Peterson Lake property. Thank y'all for addressing that at the last meeting, so I couldn't be here then. And I just wanted to follow up with more questions on that one. Specifically, as I've been learning the PUD process in here, I learned that the Citizen Advisory Board had been disbanded. So I'm just kind of curious to hear more about what happened with that. And specifically, my request with the housing for the Peterson Lake property would be to consider the housing crisis and consider not removing housing from the market during a housing crisis. I understand that it's not a money positive thing for y'all, but removing that income probably isn't going to solve that problem. It's just going to take away a revenue stream, and just if you make it into a retreat center, it's just going to cost more money and upkeep. And maybe there's a possibility of keeping people currently living in those homes on as caretakers and they vacate for a retreat or something like that. Is that 3 minutes?
No, you keep going. You're good.
And then with the issue of clear cutting the property, I'm curious, you said that you didn't consider the logging that was done there a clear cut. So I'm curious how you define that term and what the differences are, because to me, if there's a forest and then there's not a forest, even if there's just smattering of trees of, a foot or less diameter, then that's a clear cut pretty obviously. From what I look up the definition, it says removing all or most of the trees from a section of forest. And I'd just like to request that in line with the PUD's value of sustainability, that the land be managed with an eye towards sustainability with a global purview, considering climate sinks of 100-year-old trees. And so that instead of being logged for short-term profit, recognizing the ecological value of forest habitat. And that be taken into consideration. There've been recent rulings. I know y'all have said you work with the state, and I presume that's the Department of Natural Resources when you say you're working with the state. And there have been 2 recent rulings in the past 2, one in 2002 in this county and one in 2004 just recently, about them not following the state's Environmental Protection Act. By not accounting for the climate impacts and the carbon impacts of logging older forests. And so just a request that broader concerns be considered than just the bare minimum of Department of Natural Resources logging requirements.
And you got about 30 seconds.
So alternatives to that include variable density thinning, and even revenue from carbon markets for legacy forests. And I believe that would better abide by the deed restrictions that are on that property. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. So we talked about this item a little bit at last week's meeting. Kevin, would you mind during the manager and staff report, which is the next item after the public comment, if you could maybe address the comments a little bit, since Carrie was the person who sent in the letter. And we won't be able to have a lot of back and forth dialogue. And if the commission wants, we can put it on the agenda for a future meeting, but perhaps we can just give you a little more information. Okay. Next item. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Phil Stover, District 1. A couple things. One, I wanted to thank the communications team at the PUD for getting a project page up now that shows things that are going on in real time, which is helpful for spreading the word. So thank you for that. And I'll be watching to see how my favorite projects are going. So it's good for me as well. The other thing I wanted to ask is there's a Madrona Ridge project, which is, I don't know how many years it's going to take to put 167 houses out there, but it's a substantial addition to the power grid, I would presume. And I'm wondering which substations are going to carry the additional load of this development that is in progress. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. And I guess same question, Kevin, are you able to, I guess if you could address issues that you are comfortable addressing that Phil brought up during manager staff work. Okay, cool. Anybody else in the room? Leo.
Well, I have several. One of them was about Peterson Lake, but I think she pretty much covered it pretty good. So the other thing was last week on Tuesday about 1:05 in the afternoon. Some PUD workers apparently were spotted in one of our splice enclosures, subsequently breaking a fiber, causing an outage. So a general rule of thumb is you don't get into other people's splice enclosures because it's very sensitive and very easily to cause a disruption. The other thing is I've been kind of paying attention to the construction progress and what's being done. And I noticed that you guys are direct burying cable instead of putting it in conduit. And I'm really concerned about that. And I asked one of the workers if that was normal, and he said no. They don't normally do that in other places, but the PUD said that to do it that way, because that particular cable was never intended to be direct buried. There's no rodent protection or anything like that from the cable. So, and you know, moving dirt's expensive, conduit's cheap, and they actually make CIC, cable in conduit, where you can plow it all in at one time, but it only takes just a few more minutes to pull the cable back through it once you even get the conduit in the ground. So this is kind of like an electrical layman's term, I would say, basically like burying Romex, you know, regular house wire in the ground. You can do it, but you really shouldn't do it. So.
Okay. Is that all your comments, Leo?
What's that?
Is that all your comments and questions? Okay. And I guess same thing to the extent we can talk about those things. Okay. Do we have anybody online? Not seeing any hands online. Any more questions in the room or comments? Okay. We will then move on to manager and staff reports. Kevin?
So we'll start with Joy. You're gonna give an update on some credits that the PUD has received.
Yeah, wasn't prepared, but I'll do my very best to describe what has occurred. So the Climate Commitment Act, under that legislation, part of that is carbon emissions allowances are allocated out. These are no cost allowances to electric utilities. And as such, Jefferson PUD is allocated a certain amount of no cost emissions allowances per year, starting in the year 2023. And so we've been allocated a certain amount for 2023 and a certain amount for 2024. So stop me anytime you want any clarifications. I think, some of this has been brought up in previous meetings, but again, I wasn't quite prepared, so I'm kind of, I know I'll be rambling through it. So stop me if you want any clarification as we go. So there have been, I think there have been 6 auctions for these emissions allowances. So for it's like a pay to pollute, it's a cap and invest program. And we, for the first time, participated in this last auction by consigning a portion of our no cost allowances to the auction. So for auction number 6, we do have some proceeds that I think have come in this afternoon.
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah, they hit the bank today.
Okay, and the proceeds are $299,200. That, those proceeds must be used, for the benefit of our customers, and we must prioritize low-income customers for, when we use those funds. So we do have other, we have remaining allowances that we could participate in auctions. We're currently this was a bit of a toe in the water kind of experience for us, and we'll be partner in crime with this. So thank you, Will. And we feel pretty good about the results, and we're learning as we go. It's a brand new thing for the PUD.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Yeah. Questions, Ken?
So what remains that could be auctionable?
Well, so far we consigned to auction 10,000 of approximately just over 14,000 vintage 2023 allowances. We have about the same allocation for vintage 2024 allowances, and we anticipate getting approximately the same 14,000 plus 2025 and 2026. That 4-year period is the first compliance period, they call it. So we know kind of ahead of time. So so far 10,000 of about 28,000 that we've been allocated so far has been consigned to auction, and the rest is in a holding account for us to do. We can keep it in the holding account. We can participate in future auctions. At this time, we don't think we have a compliance obligation, or we don't have a reporting obligation, because our carbon emissions, since we have BPA power, it's so low that we're beneath there's like a 10,000 metric tons per carbon dioxide equivalent threshold, and we're below that. I anticipate we'll stay below it, but you never really know. So we're going to want to be really careful in strategizing future years and not oversell, so that we don't want to have to buy back things. So
Okay.
anyway, that's where we are.
So I have a question. So basically we're getting the credits because we're a utility selling clean electricity. Is that right?
Correct.
And the folks buying the credits are buying the credits in order to be able to continue to keep emitting regulated carbon, and we are the partial beneficiaries of that.
True.
Okay.
But those, the companies and the entities that do have that compliance obligation, of course, that's going to gradually, get tighter and tighter until a future year when they're not allowed to pollute anymore. But it will be very gradual over many years.
Okay. And then there's also some sort of initiative on the ballot. And is that to repeal the entire Climate Commitment Act?
That's my understanding.
Okay. So this whole program would go away if that initiative passes, as long as it's.
I don't know.
You're not a lawyer. Yeah,
Yeah.
I realize that. Okay.
The answer is yes, that would go away.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that update. That is a new activity of the PUD, and it's very interesting. And I remember hearing about this at Wakuta and wondering, okay, how are we going to do this? So it all sounded familiar. Okay, Kevin, back to you.
Okay, so I'm going to start with Peterson Lake, and we did talk about this last week, so I don't have all my notes with me, so I may not have all the answers for you. Housing has been non-profitable to the PUD. That's one of the reasons we are getting out of the housing business. It's really not something we do, but we always do need retreats, places to have functions away from the office so that staff doesn't have to be tethered to a cell phone, that type of thing. So we do think it's a good use of our property. I know on the clearing, the rules are if you leave clusters, and that's what they call the small grouping of trees, the smaller trees, that it isn't considered clear cutting, and that's worked out through the state and the forester that we used on that property. We did replant the property. This was second growth, not old growth trees that we cut. So we will get another 30 years from now, those trees will be at the same place that these trees were 40 years. Don't know the exact dates, but so we did replant, and that is part of our commitment to the community and in that area. So we think we're fairly have done what we should have done. Some of this, you know, when we took over that property, originally neither property was rented. Now we're kind of going back to that philosophy where we're just going to keep the one house, the other house will be rid of. I think that was your primary concerns.
There was another question about, at least those questions I came up for me was the age of the trees. What do you know about the?
Second growth, I don't know what the ages were of the trees, but
Okay.
it wasn't full growth timber.
They were 100 years old.
Yeah, I don't know that.
And then there was a question about the Citizen Advisory Committee, and I'll take a shot at that. That was something that was established by the PUD, especially when the PUD was new and needed a lot of new policies, like should we have a low income assistance policy? And there was a lot of things that the Citizen Advisory Committee helped the PUD formulate recommendations. It's rather complicated why we no longer have it. That might be a conversation better to have individually with a commissioner. But I think, at least from my perspective, I'll just speak from my perspective, it wasn't the makeup of the Citizen Advisory Committee and the way it was working wasn't helping us. It wasn't helping the board do our job. And beyond that, I won't address it, but I'm happy to talk to you afterwards for more discussion. I have never been to the Peterson property. It's probably something, because we've had this come up a few times, I think I would like to go out there and see it at some point. And again, this was partly being driven because the septic systems and the condition of one of the houses. So we have to decide.
The septic, both systems need to be replaced. And both houses need major repairs.
Okay.
One a lot more than the other.
Okay. And again, this all falls under the PUD's, I think, maintaining its assets and operating in a manner that benefits our customers and furthers our mission. So some of the questions you're bringing up were brought up at the meeting when we talked about it, the need for housing. One of the questions I had, Kevin, was, did we ever talk to any of the agencies that provide housing, like Habitat? If there was any partnership opportunities, did we ever reach out to them?
We didn't reach out to them to bring them up to standards is just more than what we will ever get back in rent.
Right.
And so a lot of it was driven by dollars.
Okay. So I guess the question would be, would there be an opportunity for somebody else to bring resources to the table and maybe reduce some of our burden of us having to deal with managing these things, which I get that's not really our mission. It's not really our toolbox.
We didn't manage the property. We had Townsend Bay. They were the agent that managed the property for us. So
Okay.
As far as management, it took some of Mike's time, but the day-to-day management was done by Townsend Bay. So.
Okay. So Carrie, we don't have this item on the agenda. I would encourage you to, I'm happy to talk to you. I don't know if you've talked to Commissioner Collins or not. Happy to talk more about it. I certainly have some things I can learn about what we have out there and what our options are. So.
Thank you.
Kevin, you and I had talked about this a little bit and somehow it slipped off of both of our agendas, but I also want to go out and see the property, which I've not seen previously.
The property is easy to view. In the houses, we have to make arrangements with the renters because they're there till, I guess, 31st.
Yeah.
Which we can do, but we can get it scheduled.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll schedule those
Okay.
if you want to see the houses too before this summer.
Yeah, and do we have any, so we've notified the tenants that they have to move out by what date? again?
31st.
August 31st, and have we taken any other action as far as repairing, demolishing, anything else?
Nope.
And I guess I would just say too, that the term clear cut is kind of a generic term. I used to be a land use planner. I'm not an expert on Department of Natural Resources plans. But I could see how a person could look at it and say, that looks like a clear cut to me. And somebody regulatorily might say, no, we left X trees per acre, therefore it's not a clear cut. I think that's partly,
I think the distinction in the deed restrictions was selective cutting is allowed, clear cutting is not. And so that would be leaving the majority of the forest versus removing the majority of the forest.
sure.
So,
And I don't want to get in the back and forth. We don't have the time for the back and forth, but I think, again, that would be something where interpreting whatever deed restrictions we have, which is a question really for the attorney or
The
staff.
forestry plan was done at the same time the deed restrictions were, and we followed the forestry plan.
Okay, well, we can continue to look at this. More staff report?
Bill had a question on Madrona Ridge. They're actually,
Sorry, where is Madrona Ridge? I can't remember what that project is.
It was, I'm looking at an article you're all in the leisure here, it's off of the roundabout on Discovery Road. That's where the construction is. It's 40 acres, sort of west of the,
Oh, right.
west of Goodwill.
It's near
Yeah,
the water standpipe for the city. It's at land, yeah, on the right as you're heading out of town. Okay, thank you. So Madrona Ridge.
so Madrona Ridge, and there is also the property being developed in Port Hadlock. Similar amount of homes, 120, 140.
The Habitat
The
project.
Habitat project. So we have looked at that in our 10-year work plan. We do have projects scheduled that would feed those areas. A lot of that, and part of what I was going to talk about is our July 30th meeting is our 10-year work plan, that type of information. I don't have all the drawings and everything, but Madrona Ridge will be fed from a different substation. It wouldn't be coming out of Hastings.
I guess the question is, if we didn't have major new substation upgrades, how would that, do we see that project as affecting us in a critical manner?
Yes, if they would build 100 homes tomorrow, we would have to move things around to
Okay.
feed the load.
So Phil's on to something here. Okay.
I will say a lot of information will be discussed on the 30th, how to pack load. Right now, we have plans in place. This time of year, tons of capacity. It's only when we hit the peaks of the winter that we have any issues. And we can move load from one substation to the other substation. This particular area can be fed from Irondale. It's not ideal, but it can be fed from Irondale, which we do have capacity there.
Okay. All right, please continue.
So
Going to follow up with one specific question. Was the new substation we talked about last meeting near the paper mill, is that figure into the?
prominently,
So I think the July 30th meeting, we're going to talk about this in great detail.
Thank you.
Leo had a question on a fiber structure. I'm not sure if I know exactly where this is, if it's the stuff off of Egg and I.
There is.
We had, not we had, the contractor called in for locates, and all utilities located except out of these boxes to help determine who actually own the facilities.
So from our perspective, we had an unidentified piece of equipment.
Yeah, we didn't know whose it was.
Okay,
And it turned out to be Leo. We sent him an email saying, hey, you got to locate. So that's, I'm assuming what happened here, because like I say, we are plowing, doing a lot of work. It's at best, we're trying to do everything we can to locate water lines, secondary lines. And when we come into areas like this, we do a little research to figure out who's doing what on the, so that's what I think it is. Don't know for sure, but I can do a little research, but 90% sure that's what it was. And like I say, Leah was notified to come in and locate, which he did.
okay. So I guess, has there been follow-up, or Leo, you've been able to talk to staff about what happened and how we can hopefully avoid that in the future?
Well, I mean, general policy is you don't open people's splice enclosures. So, I mean, I wouldn't go and open waves or.
I guess specifically the question that's being asked is, are you receiving notifications of our work and requests for, I don't know, how did the request for
I
utility locate?
contacted one call to find out why they didn't notify us.
Yeah, I don't know yet. All I know is that in a couple areas, Leo hasn't located for us. We sent him an email and asked for the.
Okay, but this is something normal that you get utility locates, you go out and you have somebody
Yeah.
label.
Right,
your areas.
so A11 keeps a record and then we tell them like. They have an actual online database and you draw like polygons around the areas where you have facilities. For some reason, they said the polygon didn't show up
Okay,
there.
okay, so we just had a miss on this
Yeah.
one. Okay,
It happens.
okay. And do you have anything that you label your stuff? I mean, I don't know that we do either, like on the outside of
Yeah,
it.
we
So
do.
it's,
Our name's on. the
our
jacket
stuff is on,
and
do you
on the-
label your stuff? Again, I don't know.
We were the only one that, yeah, we were the only one up there, so we
Okay.
should put labels on those pedestals.
Okay. Opportunities to improve communication. Ken?
Kevin, what about Leo's comment that the wrong kind of fiber was being direct buried?
I don't, the fiber we're installing direct buried is designed to be direct buried. It was purchased to be direct buried. So we're very comfortable that the process in place is doing what it's supposed to.
Okay.
Could you just talk a little bit about the choice that you made? And I don't know if we're doing the same thing everywhere, or if we're doing different things in different places about fiber and conduit, fiber not in conduit, kind of how we made that decision.
So a lot of it, 5 years ago, people would say, oh, conduit's cheap. Right now, conduit costs us as much as fiber. It's very expensive. So in some places, we have chosen to plow in cable versus in conduit. Most of the old copper system that's in the ground now is direct buried 50 years ago, and it's basically the same cable. It's only fiber instead of copper in the inside. So we're comfortable. There are places where it's extremely rocky. There's things like that we will install conduit, or for example, where they're boring and there's reasons they have to bore, they'll install conduit those times. So we are installing conduit in places that make sense. The other places we have determined that we're comfortable with moving forward with our design.
Okay, and I know that there's been discussion of rodent damage to fiber in other places. I think that was mostly overhead. Is there anything different about fiber versus copper that's more attractive to rodents, or are they just chewing on the rubber stuff on the outside, or hard to know what they're chewing on?
They chew all the way through it on some of our overheads. And we've had some overhead rodent problems. We changed our design a little bit so that we don't have that problem anymore. Like I say, we're not expecting any rodent problems with the materials we're using. It may happen, but we're not expecting it to happen.
Okay. All right. Anything more on the staff report?
Oh, comment
You
on
can
that.
make it quick, sure.
Yeah, so your own internal policy is everything goes in conduit now. I mean, so if you build a house, customer put in conduit, you don't lay cable in open trench anymore, right? You require everything to be in conduit?
The reason we make them put it in conduit from the transformer to the house is because of their landscaping, and if we have to come in and pull it out, we don't have to deal through any of their landscaping. So that's the reason that the conduit statement's there.
Right. And we have a policy on how we're supposed to bury conduit, how we install broadband, or is that literally up to us?
Literally up to us.
Okay. So I think we have a difference of opinion here. Anything more?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, we are at the end of, machine shut off. Give me a second here. End of manager and staff reports, commissioner reports, and today it's just you and me. Commissioner Collins, you ready to go first?
I can do that.
Okay.
21st of June, I met with the general manager, and I also met with some resident Eagle Ridge. And there'll be a discussion of that later on in the agenda. I'll have more to say about that. On the 28th, I met again with the general manager. Yesterday, I attended the board meeting for the Economic Development Council, and I'll give you a little bit of information about that. They're rolling out a program to cultivate sponsorship at 4 different membership levels. It's a brand new program. They need to do some work on their website to provide more information for the possible members. But so far, they've managed to bring in $4,500. And there was a presentation from the Jefferson Community Foundation who offered to conduct a review of the EDC's mission and vision. And the presentation suggested that the mission and vision of the EDC is not as clear as it could be. But there was not unanimity in terms of doing a workshop for that purpose. I think the big news is that the EDC has already gotten underway discussion of replacing Cindy Brooks, who is going to retire.
Oh, wow. Seems like we just hired her yesterday.
Well,
Man.
it's been like 4 years,
Yeah,
actually.
amazing.
So there's been a lot of work done on the subcommittee for succession planning.
And I assume Cindy has been involved in that and is trying to help the organization.
Yes, yes. So there was some discussion about a reconfiguration of the public sector cabinet, how both in terms of composition, its role, and the process of the interface between the public sector cabinet and the EDC. And that's pretty much it for that board meeting. I look forward to attending on July 11th, the Jefferson Land Trust event. I'll have a meeting on the 12th with the general manager again. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, thanks, Ken. So mine's also pretty short. Had meetings with Kevin Street, Joel Paisner, and Don McDaniel on the 19th of June. The Climate Action Committee met on the 25th of June. On the 26th and 27th, Energy Northwest had an executive board and board meetings, and I'm going to go into some detail because there's some kind of important timely stuff happening. On the positive side, staff reported, Bob, the CEO reported that staff has reached out to some of the tribes. And I think this is partly after the 6 sovereign agreement and Energy Northwest feeling like they just weren't really engaged with tribes. So they've had meetings with the Yakima tribal members who toured the Columbia generating station site on the outside. They didn't go through the building, and Ruby Flats. And they didn't get any commitments from the Yakimas to support the new nuclear, but basically they're learning about what the mission of Energy Northwest is. And they've invited Energy Northwest staff to come speak to the Yakima Tribal Council. So I think this is just good. And then Energy Northwest staff has visited the Nez Perce reservation and met with Nez Perce staff to talk about opportunities. So I think the good news is there's communication happening now. And they talked about also meeting, I think, with the Umatillas. The big news is the Energy Northwest is looking at forming a new limited liability corporation that would explore new nuclear. And as it was explained by staff, they felt like it's very similar to how they have these current different business lines. Like there's one business that's separate and is budgeted separately for the Columbia generating station. There's another separate business line for the solar and wind and EV charging, all these other things that aren't the Columbia generating station. And now this new nuclear idea is getting so much money rolling through it that they feel like they need to set up an LLC, both to manage potential tax liability and to not have it be within something else because it's getting rather big. So this will require the full board to evaluate and approve the agreement. And they're hoping to get that approval at the July 24th board meeting, which I will go to. It's a public meeting, so you can listen if you want to. And it's interesting because there's discussion about how it's going, and it seems like there's lots of good news about how this new nuclear, small modular nuclear efforts are going. There is apparently a new investor that's some sort of high-tech investor, and they can't talk about it outside of executive session yet because there's no deal. So they can't share it with the full board. But there's something happening there, and they're looking to add 5 to 6 more staff. So anyway, that's the big deal. And then they also gave a report on a survey that staff did of the full board. And they were asking questions. I participated in this survey. They were asking questions like, do you feel like Energy Northwest has adequate policies in place to ensure that we are not at undue risk for, say, our policies? Do we have adequate board members and knowledge base to handle the risks inherent in what we're doing? And about half of the responses were no, you don't. So last year, the executive board had a retreat in the summer in August up in Blaine, and this year they're going to have the same sort of retreat and talk about risk and how they're managing risk and what policies are in place. And it's going to be down in the Hood Canal, south end of the Hood Canal at Union. And it's a public meeting, and so I can go. I'm not on the executive board, but I can go. And I'm thinking of going just to feel more informed. And this is big stuff they're talking about. So I don't know if you have any questions or comments on any of that.
So is the additional staff that they're planning on hiring going to be dedicated to the small modular nuclear reactor
The pilot, yeah,
vision?
researching the ability to do this. So my understanding is it's to add staff to monitor and manage the project. And they're looking at having other positions, other responsibilities that would be related to the same project, but those would be contracted out. So that's as much as I learned. They also have, they reported some additional new revenue too. They have some sort of contract with Westinghouse right now. Westinghouse has technology called Evinci microreactor, and Energy Northwest now has a contract with Westinghouse to help them with the licensing process of that microreactor. So that is my Energy Northwest report.
See the article in Seattle Times?
I did see that. Yeah. So there's And that Sean, the person who was quoted in that article, is the kind of the head of the
Mhm.
new nuclear efforts at Energy Northwest. On the 27th, later in the day, we had a meeting of the North Olympic Development Council. There was discussion of a project that's going to be located in Port Angeles Harbor. They're currently going through the permitting process, and they have an agreement with the Port of Port Angeles to locate this there. But it's basically a barge on which there's going to be considerable size building that's a scale up of something that's been happening at the Swim Bay National Lab, which is to take seawater and reduce its acidity. Because one of the issues with when you have excess carbon dioxide, it gets absorbed in seawater and it becomes more acidic, dissolves coral, and in addition to temperatures going up, increased acidity. So they've been running an experiment at the National Lab to with technology to make the water more alkaline, pulling the carbon dioxide out. And this would be a scaled up version of that, trying to see if this technology is something that could be a way to pull carbon dioxide out of seawater. So that was discussed. Had a follow-up phone conversation with Mark Ozias from Clallam PUD on the next day, because for me, it sounded like a really good thing. And it was like all sorts of surprising pushback from some of the elected people in Port Angeles on it. And I didn't quite understand what the pushback was about. And looking ahead, on July 12th, PNUC is going to have a virtual meeting that I plan to participate in. And that is my report. So moving ahead, get back to agenda. We are now at the consent agenda. Do we have any changes to the consent agenda? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'll second the motion to approve the consent agenda. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The consent agenda is approved. Okay. Old business, broadband update.
Okay, share my screen and turn on my microphone.
And I'm gonna jump in real quick while Will's getting set up. Shout out to Will, his whole department, Jose, Jackson, Eric, a lot of people working really hard for the PUD, doing us a great job. They don't get recognized for it at all, but we have some people that are spending way too many hours working, doing things that are good for our community. So a shout out to Will and his team. Jose's here, Mike's part of the team. So like I say, a lot of people doing a lot of good work for the community. I'd like to thank them. So.
Yeah, it's been amazing. As of late, we've had a great, we have more team. I'm going to go over some of our most recent hires. It's gone fast now that we've got the contractors out in the field and it's summertime, and there's a lot of fiber going in very quickly. We're about to embark on installing a lot of customers. So I'll just give an update on the project and general broadband updates, and I'm open to questions at any time.
Okay.
It's just going over the projects that we have funded to date. We've got the Discovery Bay East project. That's Anderson Lake Road and Highway 20. That project is currently, we're finishing up the engineering design. We're hoping to go to bid for that this fall. It's a small project. It's approximately, I think it's a total of 70 some passings, 50 some homes that are signed up, or almost 60 homes signed up now. It's going quickly. And yeah, the 5 miles of fiber on there, or was it 10, almost 8 miles of fiber. The Olympic Fiber Corridor, that's our Quilcene to Gardner project. That's under construction now. That's got 1,300, almost 1,400 passings, 850 customers we plan on getting served at 60% take rate. It's a $12 million budgeted project, but we have an additional $3 million for that project in our Olympic Fiber match, which is the loan and grant combination we received from the Public Works Board a month or two. And
If you could mention I can see the construction. So the first one you mentioned, we have until October of 2026. The one you just mentioned just now, we only have until the end of this year. to finish.
We do. We have not gotten the final date for when that project is extended to from the NTIA and WSBO. We're targeting the end of the year currently.
So the Olympic fiber is we're hoping to get an extension on that. Is that what you're saying?
We've passed the initial deadline, which was June 30th, 2024.
Okay.
Nobody who was awarded that grant is finished, and it's still pending on the approval of the extension.
Okay.
So it's not an issue with the extension. It's just what date they finally choose to extend the award out
So
to.
that's an estimate?
That's our estimate. We're trying to be done by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jefferson North is Outer Cape George, Woodland Hills, Marrowstone Island. That's almost done with engineering design when Kevin and I and Jackson went to Minneapolis it was last month now. We reviewed the final designs for Discovery Bay East and Jefferson North.
Have we been using the same engineering firms on all these, or did we switch?
Same engineering
Okay.
firm, Finley Engineering. Yeah,
Okay.
we had a great meeting with them. We only had small changes. We felt confident with the design, and we were on budget, which
So
was
we've
very.
worked out the bugs, hopefully.
Yeah,
knock on wood on
the Olympic fiber
engineering.
corridor design was really difficult. It's a lot of miles. What is it on there? 240 miles of fiber. It's a big project through a really challenging area. And as I explained in the past, we based our cost estimates on 2019 numbers because we developed that project in early 2021. And 2020, there was no building. So all of those numbers came from 2019. So it did put us back a bit. So we had a lot of redesign to do, and that put our start date back. So we're a little behind on a lot of these projects, but we're confidently moving forward now. The Port Townsend Business Project is a loan project. It's a loan from the Public Works Board. We have done partial construction in building our data center and also doing a few businesses downtown, extending some fiber, very little. We're still in engineering design. Downtown's proved very challenging to do a design. That's pushed it back. And then the amount of attention that we've had on the Olympic Fiber Corridor project has also pushed it back a little bit. We expect to be working on that project after the new year. The design should be done this fall for that, the final design. Southeast Jefferson County is our Reconnect grant from the USDA. That's awarded, but do not have a final contract until we complete the environmental review. That review takes 6 months. We're in the second month of it now. So once that's complete, we get the final contract and then we begin engineering. So we should begin engineering next year. The In-Betweens grant is all of the little pockets left open in Olympic Fiber Corridor area by a previous RDOF award to Starlink that was then rescinded that allowed us to fill in the gaps for funding. Because those two projects are so intertwined, we melded them into one project. The In-Betweens fills in the Swiss cheese holes left in the Olympic Fiber Corridor. So that project is underway and has been engineered and permitted. The majority of those connections, there's a lot of them up in Gardner. Most of the In-Betweens area is the most populous area within that. So we're doing well with signups. I'll cover that in a moment. The Olympic, that's a $6 million grant, all grant. Looks like 431 target customers. We're well past that. Olympic Fiber match, that's the Public Works Board loan that we applied for. We have been awarded the loan. We're still waiting for the contract. We applied for all loan funding. They gave us $1,200 in grant funding, which was greatly appreciated.
1.2 million.
1.2 million, yep. And then we have 500 cash match, 500,000 that we have to provide. So total projects to date, total projects is 55 million, total grants 44 million. 9 million in loans, 2.3 million that we've got to contribute. So it's a lot. So it's a ambitious project. It's been really an honor to work on, and it's an honor to have the commission give us the green light to do this. So I'll keep going over some of it, but yeah, that's where we are today. And now we're working on the next project, which is for BEAD, and I'll cover that at the end.
Okay.
Okay.
80% success of 80% of the project so far being covered by grants is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's been pretty great.
Yeah.
And there's more funding coming. Discovery Bay East, we are at 78% take rate right now. It's a small area, so it's easy to be over. Out of a 60, I think we had a target of 65 for that, so it was a little bit, but we're still over it. The in-betweens area, we're at 66%. We've started to notify customers that are beyond the 60% take rate that they need to have pay $750. That's the deal. We have not to date notified the Discovery Bay East customers on that, and we can talk about that more. I think we will be able to pay for them because there's so few of them within the budget, but we'll come back to the board when we have a better sense of that. Jefferson North has reached 60%. So everyone who signs up after July 1st will be notified that they have to pay the $750. Olympic Fiber Corridor, we're at 56%. These are the most rural areas. They've been a little slower to sign up. People have been cautious, but as we do more construction in the area, we get more signups every day. So they keep trickling in. So we don't have any concern that we won't pass the 60% mark by the grants, and I'm sure we'll go past it actually.
And that 60% mark, is that a requirement for us to actually?
That's in our scope of work, so it is a requirement of the grant. But the grant, it only wants us to meet all of the passings. So
Okay.
you're going past them on the street. The 60% is how many homes we get connected, where we have fiber to the home and they have active service.
Okay.
So that was our estimate of how much we thought we could reasonably complete in the when we wrote our proposal.
Okay.
Southeast Jefferson, we've done very little marketing. It's at about 40%. They kind of trickle in, but we're so far from moving forward that we're not actively recruiting more signups. We will after we get the contract signed and move closer into engineering. Port Townsend Business, this one's a little bit difficult. We are at, I think we're at 18% of our goal. Our goal is 225 businesses. We're at 60, or our goal is 300 some businesses, but our take rate estimate was 225. We're at 67 businesses so far. We also have a number of home businesses that are not included. They're eligible for installation, and they're kind of mixed into that pink area behind there. We have 260 people signed up, but only 67 confirmed businesses. We have not marketed this one as well because we are kind of on pause, and it's no fun to actively promote signups and then tell people, well, you can't have it. We don't know when. So we're just taking a pause on that
Well,
one.
and it sounds like a lot of this, even though you've got these targets, you have so many people and you have to focus on one or two of these projects at a time.
Yeah. We were hoping we could do the Port Townsend Business a little earlier on. The design proved challenging, and because of we didn't have our staff fully in place. Now we have our staff, so we're able to take on more of these projects. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on. This is the Olympic Fiber Corridor in between construction to date. We began underground construction mid-March. It's been 3.5 months that we've been under construction. To date, we're just under 60% for mainline fiber underground. That's all the routes in the main roads. This also includes shared private drives, things like that. That's the majority of the work that North Sky has done to date. And that extends all the way from the base of Mount Walker, all the way up to up West Valley Road, over to Sandy Shore. We haven't really moved north of Discovery Bay very much. We haven't gone up to the Gardner area. I'll talk about more of the timelines for that. Aerial fiber has been by our own line crew. We're just over about 40%. We've kind of worked in similar areas as North Sky, where we've been up into Eagle Mound area. We've been all over the county. We haven't been up to Gardner yet. Underground drops to the home. I think we're just about at 400. So that means there's 400 homes that have fiber on the side of their house, which we're really excited about. Obviously, we've got 1,200 to complete by the end of the grant, so we've got a ways to go. But it's moving more quickly every day. We were at, I think did 40 last week. Some weeks they only did 8, but they're moving much more quickly now. We've had some hiccups making sure that customers can be notified ahead of time, and we're getting those all worked out. Aerial drops to the home. We're probably a little lower than that. I think we're probably closer to 30%. And that's the ones we're due overhead. We've got more work to catch up on there, but there's less of them. The majority of the drops are underground. The last little column, there's not enough space to write in what it is. Those are the installs. We've done about 11 installs in the Olympic where we have 5 active customers. Those were down in Lindsay Hill Beach. But as of July 16th, we anticipate the North Sky will have completed splicing all of the fiber for the Bolton Peninsula, East Quilcene. So we will begin in-home installs. And we're reaching out starting tomorrow and all next week to get those scheduled. We expect we can finish the entire peninsula probably in the first week of August or so. And then we're going to just need to keep rolling forward. There's been a little delay in getting the splicing going with North Sky. But I think we've worked out those kinks, so they should be moving forward more quickly. And as we get the protocols down, they bring in more contractors and they tend to up the number of units that they complete per day. So that's where we are with construction now. Our timeline, North Sky expects to finish underground mainline construction before October or by October. I can't remember if I have the number in there, but they're more than halfway done. They expect to have everything south of 104, which is basically our Quilcene Pond, done in August. And then they expect everything else done by October latest, but possibly late September. Aerial mainline, that's our own crews. We've made great progress. We're hoping to finish up mid-October. If it needs to go to November, it can. Underground drops to the home. We have it contracted with North Sky. They've got to be done with that by the end of November. It looks like they should be on target. Aerial drops to the home will take a little bit longer. We'll probably go into December to finish up that Gardner area. And then the in-home installation will continue on. We expect that to continue on until after the new year to finish up the in-betweens grant project. We want to have the Olympic Fiber Corridor closed out by the end of this year, but we can, if we need extra time on the in-betweens customers, we can go into 2025.
Okay.
Okay. Fiber network technician team, we've hired 3 great field crew members. Shelby Dowell is our network technician lead. She's got over 10 years of experience doing fiber. She's only done fiber for her entire career. She won multiple awards with Wave when she worked for them as a regional technician. I think she had won. She had hooked up more homes than anyone else. She had, I can't remember, it was Splice Case fiber case splicing, but she was the fastest on their team. And she got a trip to, I can't remember, was it Margaritaville or something like that? So she came highly recommended. And whenever any other candidate we had a couple other candidates that interviewed for the job, and they asked, who had gotten that job? Because I really thought I had a good shot. And we told them it was Shelby, and they said, oh, that makes perfect sense. So we were really excited to add her to the team. And as the lead, Nick Millers, again, has been in the telecom business for more than 10 years, been doing fiber for the last couple of years with Wave. He's our network technician too. Alan Toskin is new to the area. He's had property here for a while, but he and his wife just relocated from Utah, and he's our network technician 1. We wanted that to be an entry-level position, but we had so many applicants and so many experienced applicants, and Alan, again, has about 10 years of experience or more. So great team. To date, so I don't have full expenses. We have spent a lot more than is showing in the reimbursed column, but we purchased a lot of fiber before the grants were fully contracted when we bulked up to make sure we had everything on hand. So not a lot of those will start to be reimbursed over the next couple of months. We have a lot of other materials that have been gathered up that we will get through reimbursement. So I can give more reports on that going forward, but this is what I could report on in the short time that I had.
So I have a question for
Sure.
Mike. So Mike, is the money is reimbursed, how does that affect the financial spreadsheet? Where does that money show up at?
It goes right back into our cash accounts because the money that we're putting out comes out of the general fund. And
So is it unrestricted cash
Yeah.
reserves then? Okay,
Yeah, it goes back into the unrestricted cash.
okay.
Yeah, and we will be asking for, I'll explain in a second, but we just paid off our first bill to North Sky for 1.56.
Yeah, it was 1.5, a little over 1.5.
$1 million. So we will submit that reimbursement, I think, on Monday. So I included it in this total as well, even though we have not received the money back. Generally, it's about 2 weeks turnaround time from the state.
That's pretty good.
They've been great. They want to get the money out the door, and they have told us so. So we try to get it out there. So we have so I've added in 3 million from the Olympic Fiber match grant loan combination to the total budget of the Olympic Fiber corridor. So that's 15 million. That is what we borrowed the money for. That's what we went after to cover our overages. So that's our total budget, reimbursed almost 4.5 million, remaining 10.6 million. We have not received our next invoice from North Sky for May construction. So that should be coming any day. So that's going to be at least $2 million. So
Wow.
that'll start going fast. The in-between grant, $6 million. We've been reimbursed for 259,000 to date. We still have a lot of money left over in that. It's a much smaller amount of fiber that has to go out for that grant. Discovery Bay East, we've only bought equipment and some materials and had an engineering. Mr. Collins.
So the assumption when you label something as a reimbursement
Yeah,
is that that's money coming in to cover what has been spent.
correct.
And it's a little bit of a surprise to me that the PUD has spent $37 million.
No,
No,
the PUD has spent probably $7 or $8 million. We don't have the materials.
That's the
included.
total project budget, which we have not yet spent because the work has not yet been done.
Total budget, the amount that the amount that we've expended and been reimbursed for, and I probably should have added the expended and reimbursed, and the amount we have left to spend. So I will have a better expense report in a future meeting.
thank you.
Yep. So just walking down, and we'll include this with the agenda, and we can send it out to the commissioners. $2 million for the Port Townsend Business Project, $500,000 that we've spent. We bulked up early on our network equipment and building out our data center with that loans. We've got that included. Jefferson North has been mostly engineering and some fiber that we purchased. So that's the totals to date. Okay. So the last slide I have on here, this is just the overall project's timeline. We're hoping that, like as I said, to finish the Olympic Fiber corridor this year. The in-betweens, we expect to go a little bit into next year. We should be out to bid for Discovery Bay this fall. Right now, it's just pending some more easements that we need to obtain to keep the fiber route low cost. And then as soon as those are obtained, we can finish the design, send that out. We're hoping we can start construction before the end of the year. Jefferson North, similarly, hoping to finish up the engineering, and then we would get it out to bid late fall for starting construction next year. Port Townsend Business Project engineering should be done by end of the year. Bid sometime in the new year. Some of this will kind of depend on cash flow, where we're at, and availability of crews to do. So Port Townsend Business or Jefferson North might have to inch farther into the next year or start a little bit later if that's the case. So I am generally ambitious on my timelines and frequently revising. Southeast Jefferson, we don't anticipate that we will receive our contract and finish environmentals till after the new year. And then it will be a lot of engineering. So it would be going out to bid second half of the year. Estimated for a year and a half to complete that project. The BEAD projects, we're working on those now, developing that area for our electric service territory. I can't remember. We were estimating about 700 connections, $10 million initially. We're going to be refining that in the next couple of months. They're spread out all over the place. It's not an ideal application. It will be very expensive to connect a relatively small number of customers. But that is in part what BEAD is there to do, is to connect the last unserved customers. So working on that. And we're also exploring ways to possibly pick up customers east of our county boundary in Clallam County, just past Gardner. So we're looking into some opportunities there, and we'll have more for the board on that in the future. So that's it for our projects to date.
Okay, I'm kind of wondering how you're feeling in terms of you listed some new staff hirings, and could you describe the process a little bit by which you're deciding we really need to add somebody, or okay, we got a good bunch of folks now, let's see how we do and how things go? I mean, when do you know you've got the right number of people in the broadband side of things?
We have plans for I think we're almost at where we planned out to be for the total number of staff. We may or may not need one more network tech, or we may have to farm out some of the installations and hire a contractor, depending on deadlines and progress. So we feel really comfortable right now. We've got a great team.
Whoops. For broadband.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It really has. That's
Long
been
time coming.
There
Change going on.
So we really want to just we've got our team, they're out there right now. They've been doing a lot of inspection. They've been doing the overhead drops, but we're waiting on the installs. So we want to see how many they complete, where we are, and then we're going to reassess on our next steps for making sure we can complete the deadline. And then we have to look as we move forward, when we start juggling more projects, how we do. But we may also have to hire contractors. So we will see.
Ken, any questions? Okay.
No,
Any public questions?
it's impressive.
Bill?
Oh, thank you.
I don't know if it's maybe a website update or something I heard, but I have in my notes from a while back, Jefferson North. In the area where I'm in anyway, we were supposed to see boots on the ground in our neighborhood spring next year, and it sounds like construction doesn't start even until fall. So is that a slide, or did I misunderstand?
There might be portions of the website that need to be updated. We're just finishing up sending another, for everyone that signed up, we're going to send up another update tomorrow. So we should be keeping people in the loop.
So I should think in terms of people in the neighborhood in fall next year, or is that really not until when would we see?
I can't say when your part of the grant area would be completed. We'll have to wait till we get to the contracting part, and we divide the areas up into what are called ponds, little sections. And so when we create that order, we'd have a better sense. But it would be in 2025. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. So is that the end of the broadband update?
That is it. Oh, did you want me to go over the public map that we updated? I could do
Please.
that if you'd like. Yeah. All right. Let me stop sharing here. Okay. So if I go back, let's go this way. Project areas.
That's things under construction, Will.
Yeah. So what we did is we've had this map on the website for a while. Let me. Good luck, Jeff. That's gonna be.
Yeah,
difficult.
it says it's 75 degrees and it says it's set to 70 to 78 and God knows.
Yeah.
Oh, because 5 o'clock it changes.
Oh, probably that's it.
Yeah, we need to knock it down because to conserve energy at night.
So this is the map we've had on the website for a while. We did some modifications. You can click the search button. You can type in an address and it'll show you if you're inside the grant area or not. It'll zoom right to your location. What we added is, where is it? Is that up here? No. Last one. Sorry, I can't see from this far away. So we added a couple more features. So as we are working on the construction of the Olympic Fiber Corridor and the in-betweens grant, we have broken up the areas into ponds. And it's hard to see. Let's see if I can. Yeah, that doesn't help a lot. Well, you can see Gardner Pond. Let me see if I can. I can't. Yeah, this is too hard on this little screen. There we go. There we go. That's better. So those are the ponds as they're broken out. And Quilcene means that it's being fed from the Quilcene fiber hut at our substation. Gardner means that the fibers is being fed out of our Discovery Bay substation. So those are all attached there. So it's each of those are a little zone. They're kind of being built one at a time. Pond B is the Bolton Peninsula. That's the first one we're going to complete, kind of work our way around the Quilcene Bay there, and then be heading north with all of the installations. But we're in construction in Gardner Pond E, Gardner Pond D. It's really Gardner Pond A and the one below it that we haven't gotten to. So everything else has been worked on. I'm going to turn that off when I can find the cursor again. So you can turn those on and off.
Okay.
And this is the other new feature, which is the existing fiber and the new fiber. Did not work? Oh, there we go. So let me zoom in. Oh, where'd that go? There it is. So you can see on a street level basis where all the fiber is being placed. So the green is what's already been installed and the red is what's yet to be installed. Unfortunately, a lot of the red has been installed. We were waiting for the engineering firm to process what are called the as-built plans. And once they do that, then the red will turn to green.
Okay.
So they're a little bit away from that. That's where all the fiber will be going on a street level, and that's available to anyone on the public. And then we added back in the fiber that we already have in blue up top. So you can see on a street level where the fiber is. We don't have access, and we don't want to share any of the splice points or things like that or other critical information. So trouble has been in communicating in the Port Townsend area where splice points are, which is if it's near a splice point, if it's not too many spans away, if we don't have to bore underground or cut a lot of concrete, we try to make connections one by one. But if it's any of those things, we're not taking connections right now. So that's our updated map on the website, and that was the last thing I had.
Okay, thanks, Will, for the update. Helpful. All right, so are we moving on to Eagle Ridge?
We'll move on to Eagle Ridge. And we did get an email questioning on the Eagle Ridge, why we didn't notify the people there. That's my bad. It was a last minute ad on Friday. I didn't think to reach out to them. So I know Ken had talked to him either that day or the day before. So that, like I say, I can take responsibility on that one. We've been working, I'll have Jose give a little bit of an update here shortly. HDR is comfortable that when we move and install the new pumps down at their recommended site, that it will fix their pressure and their volume. They still have a little bit of engineering to do on the volume with the information that was sent to them 2 weeks ago now. They needed a 5-year history. There's a little bit of delay in getting the last of the information to them for that area. We were hoping that we would have a decision from HDR today or this week, but with the holidays, it'll be next week sometime when we get back from them. The last piece of the puzzle is not only do we have to move the pumps down to the new location, but whether the piping is going to be the correct size. We've been waiting for that for a couple of weeks.
So we don't know yet in terms of the diameter of the pipe that's going up to Eagle Ridge.
We don't know if it's going to be sufficient for the quantity of water needed. That was their last test, or not the last testing, the last request of information is to take all the meter reads for the water system and calculate that out to make sure that at peak over the last 5 years, that pipe was the right size. And that's the last piece they had to do.
One of the issues that came up in discussion was the location of a fire hydrant along Oak Bay Road, because we know that there's not going to be sufficient water pressure to serve a hydrant that would be located at the Eagle Ridge level. So what about the feasibility of putting a hydrant in there?
So on hydrants, we do get requests to put hydrants either in or close to neighborhoods. If it's a development going in, we do require them to pay for it as the development goes in. In this case, we would ask the community to pitch in and help pay for the hydrant. If, depending on how we put the pumps in, there may be some savings there that we could pass along to the homeowners association or the group there for the hydrant.
Do we know an approximate cost of a hydrant?
I don't, Jose, you want to throw, I was gonna say 5, 6.
$5,000.
Okay,
That's 6,000.
okay. Has that been communicated to the neighborhood about, okay, if you want a hydrant, it can't go up where you are, but it could go down on the road. It would be about this much. Has any of that been communicated?
Some of this needs to be discussed when we get a full plan in.
Okay.
Because the board has some discretion on what we do once we start construction.
Okay.
Staff will make a recommendation, but it will be part of the discussion that we have at the time when fire hydrants have to be the size of pipe that goes up there. We can't put a hydrant, even if we had all.
No, I totally understand that the
Yeah.
one can't go in there. I get
It
that.
just can't be done.
It was never designed for that.
Never designed. Even if we need to upgrade the pipe to get up there, we wouldn't install the size of pipe required to put a hydrant in.
Right.
It would not be efficient.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just kind of wondering about, okay, we've got the plan that's proceeding. I'm kind of wondering how we're going to handle it once we have the plan, and then we're talking about here's what we plan to do, here's possible add-ons. How are we going to include the community in that? Are we thinking about having it as an agenda item, or you could give us the full report and list out an option, and here's what the PUD is planning to do because we feel like it's on us, and if the community wants an enhancement, here's what the enhancement would cost. Is the community interested in that?
I believe it will be a discussion. I know Ken has already met with them. I assume that will kind of continue on, and then staff will have recommendations. We will work with Ken, but it will come back to the board because we have discussed it here in the board group.
Okay.
So
And then do we have a policy on fire hydrants? I mean, what is the standard for where these things are? And I mean, I get it that a new development, it's reviewed, and if it's determined to require one, then one goes in and it's designed for and all that. But we have these kind of legacy developments. I'm just kind of wondering, what is our policies on fire hydrants?
Our policy has been, we will install them, but we do require the group requesting them to pay. There's been times where we've worked with them
Mhm.
as if we're working on that pipeline anyway. And a lot of times it'll come up as we're doing work, but the policy in the past has been that the requesting entity, whether it be the fire department
Okay.
or a customer.
In reality, I mean, I don't know, how many homes are up there?
At this point, what, about a dozen homes?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, 5,000 or 6,000 sounds like a lot, but at the same time, it's for utility work, it's still a pretty modest cost if folks want.
Mhm.
Jose, you want
You got all of it.
Okay.
We're still waiting on HDR to come back.
Okay. Do we have any Eagle Ridge folks here today? Did you want to say anything or have any questions?
Well, I guess I just want to go back and understand how this whole process is going to start. You're talking about pipe size. We already know pipe size is inadequate. That's been determined many times.
So we're waiting on HDR, the engineering firm, to take the information I got last week and tell us whether it is or isn't, because ultimately we need them to come back and tell us, how to build this system to make sure that it works in the future.
Okay, then my next question is, I think when we first started discussion with you, that we talked about cost to really fix it the way it's supposed to be. I mean, moving the pump down is kind of an interim fix, but the ultimate fix was to enlarge the piping, because it was determined back many years ago that the piping wasn't sufficient. So I guess you're just going back and revisiting that, from what I understand.
Yeah. To my knowledge, this is the first time HDR has put it in their hydraulic model to model that what is needed up there. So I can't really comment on the past, because I don't know who told you that, so I can't help you there. I will tell you though, HDR is a very reputable engineering firm. They will have a solution. They're working through Jose. We've given them tons of information. We've done a lot of testing. So I'm comfortable their solution will be very good.
So Kevin, so HDR is being asked to provide an engineering design to provide, is there a number that you can share, X gallons of water per minute per home? What is, what are they being asked to design to? What is the goal?
So they took all of the information and they're saying, okay, at peak demand,
Mhm.
over the last several years, this much water is needed for this community. And then they make sure they can deliver it. They put some, in the electrical world, we call them safety factors, but they put in some things so that if things would change and they would need more water, stuff like that.
Okay, so I guess, go
In
ahead.
terms of what customers can understand, and also some of the commissioners, what does that translate to in terms of water pressure at the individual houses?
So what they do is they model to the worst case scenario, and they say you have to have 30 pounds and a minimum of, there's, I don't know the gallon rate. Do you know the gallon rate per minute
Per home?
per home? I think it's Gerald design. I can get that, but it.
I guess for me, when we say we're hiring an engineering firm and they're looking at, you know, the problems. Here's the elevation, here's the pipe sizes, here's where stuff is. Just wanting to know, what are we designing to? What are we asking? So that the homeowners up there know that, okay, here's what the engineers have been asked to design to, kind of exactly what Commissioner Collins is asking. And I think that would be helpful to have, just so that everybody knows, okay, the engineers, this is what they've been tasked with. And then when we get this plan back, it's, you know, engineering wise, it's supposed to provide that level of water with these fixes. And I think that would be helpful, just so we're all on the same page about what we're trying to do. And if the homeowner's like, hey, we didn't think that was it at all, we thought it was going to be X, Y, and Z, we can have that discussion. And I realize the work is underway, but I think communicating what's being, what the attempted design is for would be helpful.
And HDR is designing to the state and federal requirement.
The minimum water flow
At
requirements.
maximum usage.
At maximum usage. Okay. And again, Jose, you don't know off the top of your head what that is or what those numbers generally are.
Now, so state law says it has to be 10 pounds. It's 20 pounds at the home. Minimum pressure at peak demand.
Okay.
Well, that's not a lot.
So what they're designing is based on usage, what that's gonna entail for that to happen. Pipe size, elevation, all those factors. That's what they're designing right now.
And it sounds like, again, that would be at peak. So that's worst case scenario. Normally your water pressure.
Hydrant on, down the line,
Okay,
pressure dropping,
Okay.
Normally the water pressure.
pump house being at, 50 pounds more now with the elevation drop of 160 feet. We'll just play pretend and say 400 gallon a minute fire hydrant is open. They would not lose any pressure at the pump station. It would continue to flow
Okay.
positive pressure to those homes.
Okay. And I guess it would be helpful to know too, that, okay, if it's not peak conditions, if the fire hydrant that isn't there yet isn't on.
No,
that-
this is fire hydrant
Existing
that is
fire hydrant.
there.
Oh, there is one there.
It's down the road.
Downstream.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
You said that the engineers were using the last 5 years. Well, 5 years ago, we didn't have this many people on the system.
Yeah,
And then there's an additional homes coming on, 2 that we know of for sure, and a possible 3 more.
yeah. The home's only been there 2 years. They take the 2-year information or 3, however long the home's been there. Their request was 5 years for everyone. We could go back 5.
But they're looking at the current homes.
Yep.
The number of homes today.
From today, 5 years back, every single month.
Okay.
And as far as funding, I know, Kevin, when we first had our conversations, we talked about that there was not a budget line for our system. Have you put anything in the making to create us a budget line so that when we do have maintenance that needs to happen, that we're not here waiting for funding as we are today?
So once we get this engineered, the project will be vetted out and the funding will be made available. Maintenance is a little different. Maintenance, we have funding for maintenance. So the project via the moving the booster pumps down and that kind of stuff, we will fund out of the general fund. If the pipeline requests, or we have to do some pipeline work, we may have to look for funding somewhere through the state or something like that. But the pump relocation, we can do that with in-house funding. Depending on what the next steps are, which we should know in a week or two, that the funding would be
So
look
we'll
at.
know the estimated time is 2 weeks to know what HDR has to come up with. And I'm assuming that's the curve lines, which you discussed last time, et cetera.
Yes, really to increase the size of the pipe for that distance would be a major expense for the water department, and that we would have to look at options there.
And we'll know whether that has to be done in 2 weeks.
We hope, we told you that 2 weeks ago, and we still haven't got it from HDR, so that is our hope.
Okay. And then my next question is, will this be done before the line extension happens?
The line extension, we're not sure when or if it's gonna happen.
Is that a development project that's,
They're tapping on basically the same little area they're
okay,
looking at tapping on. So, and
Is that, pardon me, is that for the resort that is going in, or is that housing?
I think it's how, oh, is it the resort? And if they tap on and it degrades our, or your system in any way, then they have to pay for the upgrades.
so is that,
As whole.
has that project gone through environmental review and permitting, or is that somehow in process right now?
It was told they're moving forward.
I mean, these are basic questions that should be, I mean, the developer should be required to answer before they get their project approvals. I mean, that's part of county and city permitting, is they've identified an adequate source of water. And if they just say, oh, Jefferson PUD, and they haven't been having to engineer it, and then all of a sudden it's all built and it's all done, they're like, oh, they're gone, and now we're stuck with it again.
That has happened in the past.
Yeah, it really concerns me, you know.
Understanding also that there's some sort of regulation or law that you can't add another connection if it's going to impact our connection or our water flow or whatever. And that's why we've got concerned right from the beginning, because if they're gonna connect, how is that going to affect us when we're already having issues? So that's why I keep asking the question.
Right.
We have our problem resolved before, you know, and we're not opposed to the line extension coming in. And in fact, in some ways, I think it would help us if you have I've been told there's an 8-inch line going in. Well, that would be perfect timing to put the fire hydrant at Oak Bay Road. You know, because it's a matter of teeing in and putting a hydrant there, because now you have the line. And just for clarification, we'd never asked for the hydrant to be at the top. I mean, we knew that was impossible.
Okay, so do we know what the status of this project is, and whose job on staff is it to be reviewing new projects like this and their impacts to our system?
So for a project like this, we don't have anyone on staff. Jose can look at certain things, but a lot of this has to go to HDR. They have all that system model. They know what the flows are through there. A lot of the testing, when Jose said they open a fire hydrant and the pressure drops, they did all those testing.
Water department. Water department.
You know, when did you do that, Jose? 2 months ago?
Yeah, something like that.
You know, so they already had our system model. Then they take this additional information and put it in and show what it did throughout the system. So they use that information. Okay, when you tap on and you're gonna use this much water, are you gonna have adequate supplies? Are the people behind gonna see any problems based on what you're doing?
Right. So my concern is the way the development process works is a developer proposes something. In this case, it's in the county. They go through county permitting, environmental review, and they send out notices. And if we don't tell them, hey, we have a water issue in the area, we think engineering needs to be done to ensure that water pressure serving existing customers is not, you know, falls below a certain standard, the county's not gonna make them do it. And I guess my concern is, are we
Yes, we're-
communicating?
We're getting that information. It first came to Sam, I'm gonna say year and a half ago, 2 years before she left. So the
Okay.
county is pretty good at notifying us, and making sure that, the developer contractor comes in and visits us before they allow them to do anything.
Okay, but it sounds like on this one, we're not sure.
Well, we're not sure, and Jimmy's online. He may know a little bit more than I do on this project. I haven't heard anything for a while.
Okay.
Which is somewhat normal. Hey, Jimmy, do you know anything?
I haven't heard anything from that development in quite a while now.
And we usually hear, Jeff, because it's not only water, they need power. You know, so it's really, we know, not we, Jimmy and his group really know as much as the
Mhm.
county based on, we're not only the water purveyor, but we are the electric purveyor also.
Okay, yeah, I'm not feeling a high level of confidence here that we're not having things slip through. And I remember like with the Port Ludlow thing, when that big project was happening, and we're like, gosh, we don't, the breaker lane thing, gee, we don't have the power. There's like this window of opportunity when you can make a developer pay for these things, and then they can spread it out amongst the cost of all their homes. And if we miss that, I'm concerned it then is gonna fall on us to pay for it.
So everything on breaker lane, we do make the contractor pay for the line extension. What, I'm gonna change topic just a pinch. What the staff needs to build all the way back and including the substation is the capacity.
Exactly.
charge. And that's how we would pick up those additional dollars coming back. On the electric side, you don't make them build all the way back to the substation, just say you can't build. You know, that's kind of the response, unless you have, like I say, some way to.
Okay, well,
Capture
this may
those
be a conversation for me to have outside the meeting too, just to
Mm.
kind of understand, again, make sure we're not missing opportunities so that we're not stuck with it, or we're not in the awkward position of saying, sorry, we can't hook you up, and everybody thinks they're all done. So, okay. Sure.
When HDR comes back in 2 weeks, and this is a hypothetical, they say that the lines do need to be increased. Are we ready to move forward to do that?
So could you talk a little bit about, once the plans comes in, what are the next steps?
So the next steps would be determined by the project. They're gonna come back, and if they say, okay, you've got to upgrade the pipe, then we would look at the cost. If it's a 4-inch pipe, 6, they'll come back and give us all the parameters. And then a small group will sit down and they'll run some numbers. They'll use kind of what our local contractors are charging now to do this type of work. And then depending on what those costs are, whether we can fund it in-house in water or not, or whether we have to get outside funding, there'd be a discussion at the board level. Staff would make a recommendation. We know just moving the pumps down will help the situation. So that part we can move forward on. Where we're going to maybe have a problem is if it's the piping, because that could run us several $100,000, and that would have to be discussed and decided how to move forward with that project.
I guess that's why I'm asking the question. We have been going through this for 10 years? At least 10 years. We don't want to be here another 10 years while we're still determining when it's going to be fixed. So, and I know, Kevin, you come in as the new manager, so I'm not pointing fingers at you.
You can, it's fine. I'm good with that.
It's just that, I hope you can understand our concern that we don't want to wait another 10 years. We're aging here.
Well, in all fairness, how many homes have been added to Eagle Ridge in the last decade?
Well, we started, when I moved in, there was only 4 of us.
No,
Yes.
So since the 4 of us and I moved in, well, our house was completed in 2005. And as of today, there are,
7 plus.
what's another 2, 3, 4, so 11. We have approximately.
Okay,
11,
so,
with the possibility of 3 more.
yeah, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that over the last decade, the problem has been exacerbated because there's more housing up there.
And how long has the PUD been running the water system up there?
Maybe
12 years.
2005.
So during that,
When the development was originally made, the developer put in his own pump.
right,
So the homeowners association had its own water system.
right.
A PUD came to the homeowners and said they wanted to take over
Mm-hmm,
the system.
right.
And the homeowners agreed to that, and PUD then took over the pump operation.
Mm-hmm,
A few years later, without the homeowners' knowledge or agreement, PUD decided to shut the well down and to run a line from Oak Bay Road up to the existing piping.
mm-hmm,
And obviously, at the time they did that, their engineering did not take into account the total number of homes that would be developed there.
right. Yeah.
And I think that
Mistakes
was
were made, it sounds like.
some 2000. It's been
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else, Kevin? You'll, and there has been, so when things come in, even when we're not having meetings, there's some communication happening with the Eagle Ridge folks. There's not communication happening.
Other than, I will say, Jose made one phone call to me and told me he promised he'd keep me up to date. However,
Okay.
today, we had no idea about this meeting being an agenda.
Well, and this was
Well-
a,
I think I made it clear when I visited with you
We
that it
didn't
would be
know-
on the agenda.
We didn't know which agenda.
well, it sounds like we don't have a lot of news anyway. We're still waiting for the plans. So I think we'll probably get updated at each meeting. And it sounds like the agreement is when the plans come in, you will be notified. Is that right?
Correct.
Or cool? Okay.
It's really fantastic.
All right.
Somebody to explain to us what that all means.
All right. Is that a possibility of sitting down with the neighbor? One, I mean, we have to get them, we have to look at them and figure out, okay, what is this asking us to do? Can we do it?
I would prefer some of that to be given to the board first.
Okay.
So that typically, whether it's fiber, electric, whatever, we try to get it to the board first. before
Okay.
we
Yeah.
share it.
So once it's come in though, please let them know so then we can let you know when it'll be on the next board meeting. Okay? We cool?
Hmm.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I totally get how, I mean, we just take some things for granted, like in here, it was getting really hot. It's like I take for granted that we can run the air conditioning. You take for granted that your water is going to work. And so we appreciate your continuing to work with us as we try to make this situation better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Like I said, the urgency is when we found out there was a line extension, we thought, okay.
Yeah. 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 I still have questions about that. So, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on old business, or was that the second one? That was the second one. So now we're on new business, electrical pre-qualification contractor. Who's leading us on this one?
You got me too? So per the RCW, to work on our high voltage electrical system, the board has to approve all contractors.
Okay.
This contractor came in to Karen to get on our work roster, and I encourage the board to approve them. Mike has gone through the financials. They're a very reputable contractor. They do both electrical work. They do fiber work. They have a telecom division. So I think it's a good fit for us now. They're out of Utah. I've worked and been associated with them for, gosh, 30+ years.
Hmm.
You know, very reputable company. So this is the first touch. We want to put them on our high voltage electrical work roster list.
Okay.
And we recommend the board that we do that.
Okay. Ken, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Is there any reason why we can't approve it today?
We can prove it today or bring it back in consent agenda next
So-
week.
I move that we approve the contractor to be on the pre-qualification list.
I will second the motion. So this is a motion to add Wasatch Electric LLC to our district's 2024 list of pre-qualified contractors for electrical facility construction or improvement. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, we have approved the motion.
Thank
Got-
you.
Got more folks to do work for us.
Yeah.
All right, I think we are at the end of the agenda, if I am not mistaken. Oh, man, come on, mouth, move.
We are.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. We have reached the end of the agenda. It is I can't get there. 5:46 PM and we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.